So I think for 60 users using Microsoft's calculator to use Cowork, like I said, the new calculator reduces that slightly, but it's still $164,000 a year for 60 people. Yeah, and that is a crazy amount of money. And if you scale it up to, I looked at 1,680 users,
Yeah.
and that came out over 400,000 a year.
Rich, Microsoft for say past 10, 15 years have licensed everything the same way per user per month. But last week they kind of made a huge announcement when it came to Copilot Cowork. First, just for anyone who doesn't know, can you explain what Cowork is and then explain the change in the licensing model?
Absolutely. So Copilot Cowork is sort of Microsoft's interpretation of Claude's Cowork. So it's within Microsoft 365 Copilot, and it is aimed much more at those kind of background or semi-autonomous agent pieces of work. So you can set it off running, you can go off, you can do other things, you come back, and it's redlined a document or built you an app or something. So it's enabling it to not just be things that you do. It will work in the background, which is brilliant. It's kind of the purpose of AI to a large extent. But then what they have announced alongside it is Microsoft 365 Copilot. That's your per user license. Cowork is an additional charge. So it's billed on a usage consumption basis. So it's no longer enough to just have the license. You also need to pay for the usage of Cowork as well.
So you also need a Copilot M365 license. And on
Yep.
top of that, you can use Cowork, and that's some kind of pay-as-you-go
Yeah.
license.
Yeah. So 365 Copilot is that gives you access to the Cowork sort of functionality, and then you pay. Yeah, it's like $0.001 per credit, but then everything uses hundreds or thousands of credits potentially. So then that's where the bill starts to rack up. I mean, I suppose what I would say is Microsoft have slowly been moving this way for quite a while. So Power Platform, Power Apps, Power Automate, they made pay-as-you-go options for those. Some of the Microsoft Purview products, certain elements of SharePoint, these started to become pay-as-you-go, but they were all optional. You could still do it the per license way if you wanted to, or they were very kind of edge case bits of software that were never going to run up huge bills. But then they moved Windows Server and SQL Server. They enabled pay-as-you-go billing for those with Azure Arc, and that was a bit of a like, something's going on here moment. But again, fairly edge case. And then now, Cowork is the big, I'm ready for my close up kind of moment where everyone is paying attention now.
Yeah. Yeah, and besides Cowork, there's also a extra new kid on the block called Microsoft Scout.
Yeah, so Scout is an interesting one. So that Microsoft are calling that an autopilot. So not Copilot, but autopilot. And Scout is in preview at the moment.
Mhm.
But interestingly, you have to have a GitHub business or enterprise license to be able to enable the Scout preview. And GitHub, start of May, I think it was May 26th, they moved all the AI functionality in GitHub to a consumption model.
Mm.
So previously it was kind of included. There were certain use limits, but there was no concept of additional charging. Now, much like what we've seen with Cowork, inside GitHub Copilot, most things use credits. You get a certain amount included, and then you pay additional charges if you use more. So Scout, for some reason, needs to connect to GitHub. We assume that is so that it can use the credits and the consumption billing there. Why it doesn't use the same model as Cowork and things, I've not yet figured that bit out. But yeah, all of a sudden, the consumption billing that was kind of there if you knew to look for it, now all of a sudden it's kind of the primary in your face option for most people now.
Yeah, and that's going to be a problem because of all the you don't know what you're going to pay at the end of the month things if you don't do the billing, the scopes and the quotas correctly.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go on, James.
No, I was going to say, like, has Microsoft given you any guidelines about how much things are going to cost, or is it you really have to kind of monitor it yourself?
So they've got the Copilot Cowork calculator that they've made available. There are a couple of different versions. There's one that was available on GitHub before the official announcement that I was using. Then in their announcement, they linked to an Excel sheet that was very similar version. The main difference, so in the calculator, there are sort of personas, so the knowledge worker, customer-facing knowledge worker, technical and leadership. And then based on the preview, Microsoft have said, right, this type of user tends to do this number of light prompts, heavy prompts, and then they've estimated how many credits each type of prompt uses. In one calculator, the numbers are slightly different than the other, so there's already a little discrepancy. But then the question is, Microsoft say that a heavy technical prompt is 1,500 credits. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You'll only find out when your heavy technical users start using it, and then you look at the bill. There does appear to be. I've seen a few people online saying if you prompt Cowork and then put /cost at the end, it will tell you how much that cost, which is useful. You have to assume that it's correct. It's kind of marking homework a little bit. But even then, you've already done it. If it comes back and says, "Oh, that cost you, £10,000," you've already done it now. At least you know for next time. But if you've got thousands of users, even one mistake per person adds up quite quickly. So the forecasting, it's a lot like with traditional clouds, Azure, AWS. One of the hardest things with that was companies would say, we're going to move to the cloud and we're going to spend £100,000 a month, and then before you know it, they're spending £1 million a month. No one knows why, and this is similar model. And the fact cloud has been around for what, 20 years since AWS came out, and we're still struggling to forecast clouds and understand cloud costs. So Cowork, a week old, everyone's using it. AI is the new obsession. It's going to be very hard, I think, for people to really understand what their spend might look like, because so much of it is controlled by the user. So even if you, as the CFO, the CEO, whoever, you tell people this is how you use Cowork, if they decide to do something different, that's what you pay
They
for.
will do.
Yeah. So if you say, "Oh, you can only use it for these tasks," and people just think, well, I'll use it for these other things as well. You know, how can you forecast for that?
True.
And I noticed in you did a LinkedIn post and then you had an article linked to it and you did some examples of the kind of costs. I think one of the ones you looked at was like a 60 user company.
Yeah. So I think for 60 users using Microsoft's calculator, I think it was about 260,000 a year. I think it was.
Oh, wow.
To use Cowork. Like I said, the new calculator reduces that slightly, but it's still. In fact, let me double check my numbers. Sorry, 164,000, not 264. $164,000 a year for 60 people. Yeah, and that is a crazy amount of money. And if you scale it up to, I looked at 1,680 users.
Yep.
And that came out at over 400,000 a year. And this is using Microsoft.
That's just your Cowork credits. That's not your your M365 license or your your standard license. Copilot license. Yeah. What is it? E5 or is it E7?
That would all be separate. So whether you've got your E3 and your E5 with Copilot separate, or you've got E7, with Pilot bundled in, you would pay that, and then you would pay this additional, 100,000, 400,000. And if you start to model it out for companies with tens of thousands of users, you get into millions and millions really quickly. And
I can see some CFOs getting worried now.
I was going to say, like you're going to have to apply an ROI to every task that's done in Cowork, and then have some guidelines at the very least, but on how it's being utilized. But as you said, like someone could decide to do something else with it and use 5,000 credits or whatever. It's it's going to be interesting it's definitely going to have whatever about the technology question, which has always been there with AI. The financials come into it big time now, and it changes, I think, the dynamics of how AI is going to be used within organizations.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it was similar even just with Copilot, the traditional license. The thing, when you look at it on an individual basis, and you sort of say to someone, for £25 a month, is this thing worthwhile? And they kind of go, well, yeah, it makes this a bit easier, it makes that a bit easier. But then when you look at it at an organizational level, and it's, is this worth £7 million to buy it for all my users? Or could I use that 7 million to do something else, hire people, build a new office, whatever it might be? It becomes harder to answer. And Cowork has kind of accelerated that massively. And then you get into the questions of, what is the value that you get from AI? And you see these things, on average, users save, 1 hour a day or whatever it might be. But then from a business perspective, kind of, is that actually worth it? What are they doing with that extra hour? Is it generating? And I don't want to sound like super capitalist. Is it everything has to be about generating money? Because it doesn't. But if you're spending millions of pounds, are you getting anything back for it? If you, as a company, if you're happy to spend the money so that your staff, have a bit more free time, brilliant. That fair enough. But you have to have some kind of answer. And at the minute, what we're seeing, so many customers that we speak to, they're having to use AI. They're going down this AI route, and no one's necessarily thinking about what do we get back from it? It's more everyone else is using AI, so we'd better use AI, because if they're doing, we don't, we'll fall behind. But there will come a point, and I think Cowork, as you said, James, might be the point where people go, hang on a minute, this is less abstract now. If we're going to spend, if I put these numbers in a calculator and there's 50 million comes at the bottom, we need to think about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it's going to be a big kind of inflection point for AI in organizations, because they will go like, okay, so the staff save 15 minutes doing that task. Who cares? What has saved us as the business? And it kind of sounds like the change is going to be, there's going to be a need for more financial discussions. Like, it won't just be about we're implementing this technology. It's like, how much is it going to cost us and what's the return on the investment? And that's a big change. But it seems like this is where we're going with AI, is towards consumption-based model pricing across the board. I think Anthropic have been playing around with it. They haven't announced anything yet, but they are looking at it as well. So it does seem that we've been given our $20 dollar subscriptions, and now we're going to be actually no, we're switching everything to usage models. So
yeah, I mean, there's been a few
they got us on the hook, and now they want their pound of flesh.
Absolutely. There's been a few things recently where there's a term I quite enjoy, which is inference whale, which uses, they're paying $20 a month to OpenAI, to Anthropic, but they're using like $200,000 a month of service and credits. And those companies are now starting to realize they need to start earning money at some point. I think Microsoft, very often Microsoft do these things, everyone says, oh, that's awful, I can't believe they've done that. But then you give it 6 months and all the other software publishers do it as well, and then you kind of look round and everyone's doing it, so that must be the way that it's done now. And I think this is that moment where Microsoft have said, right, we're in a strong enough position. People that are using Copilot, they've already invested all this money in Copilot, so that them investing some more in Copilot Cowork, it's a smaller step than for some other publishers maybe. So I think it's the start. And I'm a fan of AI. I use AI, but I think you do just have to be more precise about what you're going to do with it. I've seen some people on LinkedIn sharing some excellent use cases they do with Cowork around, reviewing documents, contracts, etc. And you can see genuine value, but they're always on an individual basis. And then questioning, if I'm running a company and I've got 400 people doing this role and they all use Cowork, and then what's that going to cost? And I think there's potentially a point where people become cheaper than the AI, and all this move to with AI very quickly might flip around where people realize it's cheaper to get a human to do that. So it's a very turbulent time, and AI, I mean, it's a lot like football, really. There are some people that really, really love it, and some people that really, really hate it, and then you get the different sides. But I think Microsoft, sometimes they do things and then roll them back. If there's so much outcry, but I don't think that's going to happen with this. I've not really seen that many people be particularly upset about it. They said, "Oh, that's going to be expensive," but I've not seen many people say, "Absolutely not. This is fundamentally wrong." it feels like the natural evolution, like you were saying earlier. And I think because they've done it with some other products already and some other vendors, ServiceNow, they've got some consumption elements for their AI pieces, Adobe. It just feels logical almost. And I think that's the timing. The question is the timing right? Will people accept it, or will people look at the bills and say, actually, let's rethink this whole AI thing altogether?
Yeah, I saw someone posted on LinkedIn, and they were saying like the using Cowork, it cost, I think it was like $70 or something for that. But they said for what they got delivered, the value, that there was more value in what they got than the cost associated with. And it's going to be, I think, a balancing of things. It's like, you know, if I have access to Claude Cowork, and I can see how what I use, and I'm not really, I'm not doing full Cowork tasks, in fairness, like where they do start cranking up the credits, but I can track how much of usage I'm using and all that. So it's good. There's going to be a lot more scrutiny, I think. I think that, of just the days of we in organizations we just do what we want with AI are coming to an end, I think, and there's going to be, like, either on a departmental level. So there's just going to be a whole structure around it if this is going to be implemented, or maybe organizations go, well, at the moment, no, we're not going to enable Cowork, and you've just got basic Copilot, and that's what you'll have to make do with that. So it's going to be interesting. I know what you're saying about there doesn't seem to be much outcry, because most people knew this was coming. Like, we've all known this is the direction of travel. And, obviously, I was a bit taken aback when I first read your article and saw the costs of like 146,000 for a 60-person company. My company's not much bigger. Now, I suppose the caveat would that be you don't have to give it to everyone. You could give it to a select number and then do that. But I wonder, can you I don't know how it works on the billing side. Can you issue quotas, or
So you can set caps.
oh, you can set caps. Okay.
And you can do them at like a subscription level or a resource group level. So to be fair to Microsoft, they have got some sort of built-in cost-related pieces. So you can set, I think you can even set the spend limit at a per user level. So you could say, right.
Oh wow! Okay, I did not know that. Right. Okay.
£1,000. Do with it what you will. And then you can set, I know there are reports in there, so you can look at, which people are spending what, which teams. And very often Microsoft launch things without any of this, and it takes 6-9 months for them to go, oh, maybe people do want this. So the fact it's in from the beginning shows that they're learning, from previous things. Also shows that they're aware that cost is going to be the big objection.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like, the costs of Cowork are going to be here. The cost of Scout are going to be here, because Scout is autonomous. It goes off and does an action until it gets a result. Cowork, you can say stop, at least. Scout just goes off and does things. So the credit usage is definitely going to be, there's definitely going to be a trade-off between what you're letting Scout do and what you're letting Cowork do.
Yeah, and then you've got, your Copilot agents that you've built with Copilot Studio. They're all off using credits, and I've already seen, where people have started chaining agents together, and one fairly innocuous task sets off, like 64 different agents all doing different things, and the person thinks, oh, I'm doing this.
Gurjan's probably been playing around with something like that.
Yeah. And I've seen the costs quadrupling when everything is pay per use
really quickly.
Yeah, stop.
Abort.
Yeah, so there's a lot of I think one of the things for customers is this is happening in lots of different areas. So, you've got the Cowork billing, Scout, GitHub Copilot Studio, and then you've got, Agent 365 that they introduced to try and, manage agents.
You're going to need an agent to do all your billing and cost analysis.
And then, it will start to be, if you look inside any organization, their software portfolio, there's always massive duplication. I remember in a previous role, there was a customer that had 37 different PDF products. They had Adobe Acrobat, Foxit, Nitro, all these other ones. And I think the same thing's going to happen. Maybe I want to do something and I build it in Copilot Cowork. And James, you build it in Scout, and Gerjon, you build it in Copilot Studio, and it's sort of different ways of doing the same thing that are billing in different ways in different places. For especially for a large enterprise, getting a handle on what have we got out there, what are they doing, how similar are some of these use cases, and then you get into, could we batch some of these, instead of running them all immediately, can we batch them up overnight? And I think a lot of organizations will struggle to have that insight. And then that's where Agent 365 is supposed to come in. But then, that is currently licensed on a per user basis. But at some point, it will become licensed on a per agent basis. It won't work otherwise. So that will be an additional cost. And every time someone creates an agent, now you need a new Agent 365 license, and it's going to become very difficult to manage.
Yeah, because I was at a talk recently, and it was talking about basically using Windows 365 and then having agents running on Windows 365
on the VM.
On the VM, yeah. So then you have the VM cost, but then you have the agent per token cost of the agent. So again, you've got your fixed cost, and then you have your consumption-based cost. So it is for large enterprises. This is going to be a really challenging time for them, I think, because as we make the transition from kind of fixed costs, now they do have some experience of it, as we said, because it's similar to cloud, but no one has calculated what one token equals in terms of a task, it
depends on the task.
Exactly. That's the thing. But that's the thing. So, like, you will want within a company, you will want a catalog of, okay, this task is going to take 100 tokens. This task is going to take 1,000. But then, like, people, when I use AI, I go, okay, what do I need to do? And then I chain it to something else and something else. It's like it's going to be really complicated. This is going to be complex for all size of organizations, I think.
Yeah.
Gerjon, you're going to be a busy man.
Yeah, I know. I like it. And Rich, you've been in licensing for you said we talked before we started the recording.
Now, yeah.
So you've been in there. Is this something that has happened in the earlier days that we had a lot of consumption-based stuff, or?
So, Microsoft have slowly been changing the metrics for many years. Everything, it used to be, per server, that was it.
Yeah.
And then it was per processor, and then it was per core. And it all started to, and it used to be per desktop, and it was per user. So they've been getting more granular with it all the time. And it's always very, very gradual. I think, SQL 2008 was the first one that went to per core. And there was huge uproar at the time. Yeah, but then, you give it a version or two, and people can't even remember a different way of doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and I think they know that, but I think AI, cloud has been the biggest consumption metric for a long time. This idea of it's X amount for a VM, but then then you need your software and your networking and your storage and all these extra bits and that you kind of forget about. So I think they've probably learned a lot from consumption of cloud, but it does feel there was probably someone somewhere in Redmond back in like 1997 with a big whiteboard. It had this all drawn out, and it feels like they knew where it was going to go eventually. So yeah, the metrics have changed. I think consumption. On one hand, paying for what you use, which is how they always bill it. That sounds quite fair and a good idea. Like, yeah, I'll just pay for what I use. But when you're not really in control of how much you use, when Microsoft or Adobe or Salesforce or whoever, when they decide, oh, that task equals that many credits, you are you paying for what you use? Really, it's hard to know.
It feels with AI, there's been a lot of talk of the death of SaaS. This could actually be the rebirth of SaaS because, you're getting, most SaaS services you pay a fixed fee for. So it might be the fact that, it could reduce the impact of AI and we could see kind of a revival in SaaS. What do you think?
I mean, I think most SaaS products are going to go to this per user plus per consumption model, because why wouldn't you? If Microsoft are doing it, then why not? And I think there will be a market for some products to say, look, we'll give you a cap. You can be guaranteed. You spend this much, and that's it. I think some organisations will enjoy that, but one of the beauties of AI is this ability to do things that you hadn't even thought of yesterday. And I think the way that the software publishers, if you put caps on things, how can you innovate properly? I think this is going to be their messaging that you have to have this unlimited spend because who knows what you might discover or create or so I think SaaS will just become SaaS plus, and everyone will go with this model. And I think there'll come a point where there's going to be some stories, organizations spending unfortunate amounts of money on some of these consumption bills, but it will be, I think it's going to be on the customers to make change. I can't see the software publishers doing much other than saying, well, we're being transparent. These are the credits. These are the prices. It's up to you to decide how much you use. I think it's going to be, the onus is going to be put back on us as the users.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean because I remember like in the early days of cloud, a friend of mine was telling me a story about a networking device that had been turned on for demo purposes, and like everyone forgot about it, and it ended up the bill was like £50,000. So
and that still happens, every day somewhere. There's development environments that get spun up, and then all the developers, they finish, they go off to the next thing. Everyone assumes that someone else has turned that development environment off. And that's going to be the thing. It sounds silly, but as when someone leaves a business and they've got an autonomous agent that they've created, and they leave and it just keeps on running, and you keep getting the bill. Where's it coming from? If you who knows? There's going to be quite a few things like that. I think that just the way that businesses work, interact with software are going to change.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to cause a lot of changes within how businesses approach software. And as you said, I think it's a really valid point that every business or every vendor is going to switch to a consumption based model because it makes sense. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think come like 2027, how software looks if this is the kind of where we're going. There's going to have to be a lot of changes within organizations and more scrutiny, I think. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just saying, I think one of the things as well is, we talk about the bills and the costs. At the minute, because it's this sort of seat consumption hybrids, what tends to happen is one part of the business, they go, right, we've bought these licenses, we've bought 365, we've bought Copilot, this is how much we've paid. And then all the consumption is being billed to Azure, which tends to be looked at by a different team through a different lens, a different time. And they don't always put the two things together. So, procurement are going, right, we've spent 8 million on Copilot. We negotiated a 40% discount. We're really good. Job done for 3 years. But then in the background, you're paying Microsoft that discount and more in your Azure bill, but no one's kind of reconciling. I think that will be a big thing as well.
Just one of the things I read. So Microsoft have claimed that Copilot Cowork is 30 to 40% on average cheaper than Claude Cowork. Like, what does that mean to you as a licensing guy? That it sounds a bit vague.
Yeah, I mean, so on average, I mean, averages are fairly useless. I think for these kind of things, and you always see from software publishers, in the clouds, with like reserved instances and savings plans, you can save up to 72%, something like that. In general, you talk to customers, and the reality is, it's like 25%. But there's one person somewhere in a very niche case that managed to save this higher number, so they can, they're allowed to say that. And I think these averages are something similar, where, what's included, is it the highest use cases in one and the lowest use cases in another? What numbers are being compared? Yeah, it's hard to know, and obviously, they're not going to tell people. It could be a perfectly legitimate stat,
Claim.
that works for everyone, but I think it certainly customers should do their own tests, and not assume, if we move from Claude to Copilot, our bill will be 40% less.
Yeah. I also noticed that they've brought out their own model, which they say is more efficient as well. So but obviously, we're just listening to a vendor claiming that the savings are there. It is, we're so new into this that they can't be backed up just yet. But it is interesting. They're not using, you have access to the OpenAI models, the Claude models, but they also have their own Cowork model as well, which they says is, I think, is around 30 to 40% more efficient, according to what Microsoft are saying.
Yeah, which is interesting. If they're charging a lot of money over here, and then they're saying, if you use our other thing, it's less money over there. It's quite an interesting strategy. But the thing is, so I think the Microsoft model, I think it's called Mia, I think.
Not sure.
but the thing is, Anthropic, OpenAI, they are very well established, in the AI industry. So then you get that thing of, if things are working on Anthropic, in Cowork, will a company want to switch models to save some money when no one really knows how any of these LLM models work? So if you move to another model, it might be really good at this thing, but then it turns out it's dreadful at something else. I think there's going to be a lot of, oh, this works, let's not rock the boat. We'll
Let's
just,
keep it.
yeah. I think it'd be very difficult. I mean, you see it with any software, getting people to swap PDF readers or Office packages, or it's, once you've got one that works and you like, it's very hard to get people to change. And I think AI models are the same, really.
So, Rich, if you were to advise companies who are now kind of faced with this, what are the kind of the top three things they should be doing if they're looking, as we move into this kind of consumption based AI usage?
I mean, that is a great question. I think, when we talk to clients, because we're having these conversations with people, at the moment, and one of the things to do is to understand, why, as a company, why are you using AI? Yeah, and it sounds daft, but so many companies are using it because they're using it, and it's, are you trying to find efficiency gains? Are you trying to, reduce your workforce? Are you trying to, start a new product? And why are you using it is the first case, because if you don't really know, if you've given everyone Copilot or whatever it might be, Claude, etc., for the sake of it, then that's a difficult position to build anything on. And then, it's who is using AI. We see a lot, clients will say, oh, it's fine, it's only the, alpha team that are using it. We know it's just these 12 people that are using it. And, it absolutely isn't. And there's a difference between who have you bought AI for and who is using AI. Because you see it, with SaaS very often, with cloud, people are putting things on company credit cards, expensing things, so you're paying for it, even if you think you haven't bought it. I think understanding that, why are you using it, who is using it, and then trying to understand the value, like we said earlier. What does success look like? How do you, because everyone's trialing AI, they've got projects to evaluate it, etc. But how do you know if it's been successful or not? And that tends to scupper most people when you ask them. Yeah, and once you know those things, then you put into place, the guardrails and discovery and, allocation of costs to business units and all that kind of thing. But I think ideally, understanding the reasons behind it, because you can allocate the cost, but if you still don't understand why you're spending that money, then what was the point of any of it? So I think for me, it's, having someone in your organization asking these questions as well. Whether it's the CFO, or the head of FinOps, or head of AI, whatever it might be, having someone focused on this side of things, cost and value and ROI. I think that is probably long term, probably the most important place to start.
Excellent. Rich, it's been really great discussion, and I've learned quite a bit about the licensing of this and how it's definitely going to change things. So if people want to, contact you, where's the best place to find you?
I mean, I spend an inordinate amount of time on LinkedIn. So, Rich Gibbons, I'm pretty much the first result, I think. Find me on there. I'd love to connect with people. My blog is Cloudy with a Chance of Licensing, which I was quite pleased with myself when I came up with that.
Awesome, Dave.
Yeah,
And
really good name.
then my day job, I work for an sort of ITAM FinOps technology spend consultancy called Syniega. So come and find me any or all of those places. And yeah, I mean, I just love talking about this. So happy to chat with people, and hopefully some of what I say on LinkedIn is useful. So feel free to follow along.
Perfect. Thanks very much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Rich. Thanks very much. We'll see
Thanks for
everyone on
having
the
me.
next episode.